the lengths to which sometimes these big name, big profile, big star athletes act like absolute babies is astounding. I mean, good Lord. And don't sit there and say they act like women, because women don't do that crap. Like Ben Simmons, oh, my coach is something mean about me. Boo, boo. Fucking punk ass. And then James Harden's fat ass, all like 6'5", 450 pounds of cellulite and fucking lard. Fat ass, his washed up ass. Oh, I don't get along with Kyrie. He's not nice to me. You know, at some point in time, with all of these situations where you start not getting along with players, Mr. Harden, Mr. Beard, did you ever just think for a second and say, what's the one common theme? It's you, asshole! Whether it's Oklahoma City, whether it's Houston, the Brooklyn Nets, the common theme in all those ultimately failed situations is you. Ben Simmons, you notice the Sixers really didn't miss you that much this season. And you're supposed to be a fucking all-star and a key cog of the franchise. Trust the process, my ass. Well, you know what? Maybe the problem is you. And I find it incredibly hilarious that these two guys ultimately just got traded for each other for all intents and purposes. Oh my God. And the Sixers were so desperate to get rid of freaking Ben Simmons that they had to part with Seth Curry, Andre Drummond, and a couple of future first-round picks just to get freaking James Harden. Like, Daryl Morey's damn hard-on for this dude is that extensive and that Viagra-filled that he just can't quit him. He just can't. Right? In Morey in Philadelphia, it stands to reason. Same asshole that once said that he thinks James Harden is a better offensive player than Michael Jordan, which anybody with a functioning basketball brain knows is absolutely ludicrous. Absolutely ridiculous. Like, I largely dismiss the LeBron versus Jordan comparisons. But at least LeBron, when you talk about the grand scheme of things, has an infinitely better resume in that comparison than James Harden being better than Michael Jordan as an offensive player. That's just fucking moronic. And that's a dude that's making key decisions for NBA franchises. I can't imagine. Couldn't be me. But hell yeah, the other day when I saw this deal go down, I laughed hysterically. That big three of the Nets, Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving and James Harden, played, 16 games together? You talk about all-time epic fuck-ups, all-time epic wastes of damn time, all-time epic, this was a fail, that was it. And now they move James Harden when they're a contending team in the middle of the season. That's when you know your cheeks, is when your current team, who is positioning themselves to try and get a title, feels their chances are better without you than with you. Similarly, for Philadelphia, but at least you can say with Philadelphia, they never fucking had Ben Simmons this year anyways. So in theory, anything that they add to the table makes them better. Although if you're a Sixers fan at this point, you might not care much one way or another about Andre Drummond being gone, but you probably care a lot more about Seth Curry being gone at this moment than you do Ben Simmons. So again, Philadelphia better without Ben Simmons than with him. That's a reflection of you, Ben. A little too much sitting there and slobbing up on the fucking Jenner girls. Maybe focus on your damn game and learn how to develop some confidence in your shot so you actually try to take a shot every once in a while. It's a novel concept. You should try it. But I can't imagine anybody ever looking at that move of James Harden getting traded to the Nets and ever thinking this was going to work out. I believe I did a video about this last year and laughed at this trade. I think I did. Could have. Believe I did. Talking about how this wasn't going to work out. Like, why in the fuck would you think bringing James Harden into a situation where you're trying to contend for a championship is going to make you a championship contender and make you a championship team. It just doesn't. Like, James Harden consistently has proven and shown that he's more interested in other things than actually being a big-time player in big-time spots. The irony of this trade is that it possibly works out better for both teams. For Philadelphia, they could make the argument, yeah, it sucks maybe to have to deal off of Seth Curry, but in return, you do get a James Harden who helps space the floor for Embiid, who gives you somebody on the perimeter, a guy who could create his own shot, a guy who you bring in that doesn't have to be the primary option, because he sure as hell shouldn't be the primary option at this stage of his fat-ass career. But you could make an argument of Embiid and Harris and freaking Harden is a pretty good 1-2-3 combination. You might feel better about that than throwing Simmons in there. I get that. So I could make an argument that from Philly's standpoint, to trade off Ben Simmons to bring in Harden wasn't that bad. It really wasn't. And then for the Nets, while I wonder what the fit is of Ben Simmons bringing somebody like him as like a secondary playmaker who will not space the floor, but can really defend, which is something that Nets team absolutely needed. And then you bring a guy who can help space the floor into Seth Curry, give you a big that could give you some minutes down low, that could give you some rebounding, and Andre Drummond. This deal, ironically enough, actually is pretty good for the Nets if you think about it. Like, to be able to retool a contending team like this at the trade deadline and address your perimeter defense, which Ben Simmons certainly does, get yourself a post presence down low that can rebound, which Andre Drummond absolutely can, get you somebody that could be in your prime time or your, death lineup, your closing lineup, like a Seth Curry, a guy who can handle a little bit, but more importantly, serve as a floor spacer for Durant and Kyrie. Yeah. Like, this deal actually, I think, really works out for the Nets. And I wonder how Simmons will be now that he's in a new spot. Maybe he'll actually decide he wants to play. And how this will work. I mean, there are questions there. Like, how much could you really count on Ben Simmons in big spots? Like, it sounds great in theory when you think about, this is an all-star, an all-NBA first-team defender type guy. Yeah, but in the playoffs, can you count on him in the fourth quarter? Or does he become too much of a liability where now you're paying a guy $30+ million a year to sit on the bench in crunch time? And as far as the Sixers go, I come back to, it sounds great to bring in a James Harden, former league MVP type of guy, multiple-time all-star, big-time scorer, allegedly, all that other shit. But this is a washed version of James Harden. And again, I say, when you get into key spots, clutch moments in big games, you're better off with James Harden on the bench than you are on the damn floor. That's what the history says. That's what the history tells you. That's what the history suggests. So you could say that this was both teams making the best out of a bad situation, and I would agree with that. You could also say that both of these teams, while in theory they might have gotten players that better fit them, it might not have made enough of a difference in either spot. And that also might be. Like, I started hearing people talk about Kyrie Irving, half man, half season. That's amazing. The Slim Reaper's got to play with half man, half season. And half the floor, no shot Ben Simmons. And James Harden's going to go to Philly. Oh, Philly girls are going to be happy. He's coming to the strip clubs. The beard's going to make it rain, bitches. Just like he makes bricks rain in key spots in the playoffs. Oh, God. I mean, how fucking pathetic do you have to be? Seriously. Ben Simmons is fucking pathetic. He acted like a bitch, and we need to call him on that. And I kind of hate that Shaq sat there and went hard at him like he should have and then backed off like a puss. No, I don't give a fuck what's going on with Ben Simmons. He acted like a bitch. He needs to be called out as such. And as far as James Harden, everywhere he goes seems to be a fucking problem at some point in time. You know, the one common theme in all these situations is James Harden. Maybe the problem is him. And you wonder, like, just how much he really cares anymore. He can't sit there and get the same calls he used to, so now he's just pitching a fit. Like, fuck. I mean, it's a perfect example to me of two entitled, spoiled prima donnas that don't take accountability for themselves and like to get mad at others and blame others when they're the problem. So while I laugh if both of these teams get eliminated before the Eastern Conference Finals or before the NBA Finals or even in the NBA Finals, you goddamn right I will. I mean, can you imagine? That's where these teams have got to start learning that this whole concept of super team isn't always as great as you think it is. The pieces have got to mesh together well. They've got to fit. They've got to make sense. And when they don't, it's a fucking disaster. James Harden in Brooklyn was a fucking disaster. We'll see how Ben Simmons is. James Harden in Philly, just the same, could put up some numbers and be an absolute disaster. I don't know why anybody would want James Harden on their team at this point in time. Frankly, I don't know why anybody would want Ben Simmons on their team at this point. What the fuck is Ben Simmons going to mean for you in the fourth quarter? He's a guy that can't shoot, won't shoot, is afraid to shoot. So you've got a one-dimensional player that other teams are going to try and get on the foul line because he can't fucking shoot. Whatever. It's a big deal, though, and we'll see how this works out in time. But as far as James Harden with Brooklyn, I will say, I fucking told you so.